Alright guys, going into next video, it's going to be about how to set up your diet, going over how to determine proper calorie and macronutrient intake to reach your goal. So a lot of the information and proceedings that I go over in this video are going to be based on recommendations from Dr. Eric Helms from Team 3D Muscle Journey and the Muscle and Strength Nutrition Pyramid. I very highly recommend you guys check those books out. They also have a muscle and strength training period. Obviously, if you don't make a change in your behavior and lifestyle, which is the foundation of the pyramid, then you're not really going to see any true change in your fitness levels. But we're going to go over the first two levels of the pyramid today: calories, which are energy balance, and macronutrients, being if you guys looked at the last video about macronutrients, I highly recommend watching that before you watch this, just because there are a lot of concepts in there that I'm going to expect you to know within this video. So do your homework, watch that first video, and then come back to here. So we've got two different options for estimating your maintenance calories. Option one is my preference, which is going to be tracking your weight and caloric intake. So step one, we're going to track your weight using a digital scale for 14 days straight. You're going to do that first thing in the morning, right after going to the bathroom. We're just going to do that at that time so that we get a consistent read, consistent data throughout that entire time. Step two is going to be tracking your caloric intake for 14 days straight using a calorie tracking app like MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal is my preference, but there are others you can use. Step three is going to be determining the average weight of each day by adding the weight from 7 days and dividing by 7. So we're going to find the mean of each week. Then you add your 14 caloric intake values and then divide by 14. So add all of the caloric intake values and find the mean of that. You take those two numbers and you compare them to find your weekly, compare the weekly weight average with the calories to determine your rate of weight loss, gain, or if they're staying steady, that would be weight maintenance. Step four, you're going to determine your caloric surplus or deficit by multiplying your weekly rate of weight loss or weight gain by 3,500. Which we will go over shortly. But I do want to say that if you are not very experienced with tracking your caloric intake using a calorie tracking app, this might be pretty hard for you. It's really easy to be inaccurate with your tracking. So maybe consider doing both options and juxtaposing those two numbers. If the second option is way off, then you might be having an issue with your calorie tracking. So, 1 pound of adipose tissue contains around 3,500 calories. That's the number we'll use at this point. Therefore, we can estimate how much of a surplus or deficit you are in based on a weight change. Hypothetically, if you gained a pound of fat in a week, you would be on average consuming around 500 calories more than your maintenance per day, as 7 days times 500 calories equals 3,500. In order to determine your rate of loss or gain, simply multiply your rate of loss or gain by 3,500 in pounds. For example, if I were gaining 0.3 pounds per week, I would multiply 3,500 times 0.3, which equals 1050, meaning I'm in a weekly surplus of 1050 calories or a daily surplus of 150 calories. Conversely, if I were losing 0.6 pounds per week, I would multiply 3,500 times negative 0.6 pounds, which equals negative 2450 calories, meaning that I'm in a weekly deficit of 2450 calories. So, option two for estimating your maintenance calories is going to be an equation option. Again, if you're not super experienced with tracking your calories, I'd have you use this one. Step one, take a baseline multiplier, which is your body weight in pounds times 10. So for me, I'm 150 pounds. I would just multiply that times 10, get 1,500. Step two, use an activity multiplier. So this is going to be based on your lifestyle and training frequency. We're going to assume that everyone is at least weightlifting 3 times per week. So if you are sedentary, for example, your traditional cubicle job, you're going to be on the very low end. But if you're very active, let's say working in labor, like a construction worker or something of that nature, you'd be in that very active category. So you just take that baseline multiplier, multiply it by your activity level multiplier, and that gives you your estimated maintenance calories. So we're going to look at a couple of different case studies and just see how these individuals would set up their calorie and macronutrient intake. So case study number 1, we've got Joe Schmo. His primary goal is to lose body fat. He's 200 pounds, 25 years old, 5'10", retail associate, so we're going to say lightly active. He's 22% body fat, and his main goal is to get down, again, losing body fat, get down to 15% body fat or lose around 30 pounds. So we're going to use the equation for both of these individuals just to make it easier to estimate their maintenance calories. The baseline multiplier for Joe would be 200 pounds times 10, so that gives us 2,000 calories as a baseline. Light active multiplier of 1.6 times 2,000 equals 3,200 calories, so his estimated maintenance calories are going to be around 3,200 calories per day or 22,400 per week. So running with that 3,500 calorie per pound fat number, we're going to look at optimal rate of body weight loss. So we're going to use percentage of body weight to determine optimal rate of loss. So we're going to go with 0.5% to 1% of body weight should be your goal for rate of loss per week. So 0.5 to 1% of Joe's body weight rate of loss would be 1 to 2 pounds per week. So one pound per week loss would be a 500 calorie per day deficit, and a 2 pound per week loss would be a 1,000 calorie per day deficit. So rate of loss is also dependent on your length of your proposed fat loss phase. More weight to lose would give us a slower and steadier fat loss phase, whereas less weight to lose, you could be somewhat faster and more aggressive in your deficit just because we don't have to endure it for that long. So we're going to set Joe's rate of loss at 1.5 pounds per week with the end goal of 170 pounds body weight and 15% body fat. This rate accounts for some lean body mass loss. Joe's daily caloric intake will be 2,500 calories per day, and in addition to reducing Joe's caloric intake, we will add in a little bit of light cardiorespiratory work to further increase his deficit to meet that end goal. So when it comes to setting up macronutrients, we're going to look at protein based on grams per pound of body weight, and carbohydrate and fats as percentages of your total caloric intake. Again, Joe's total daily calories in his fat loss phase are going to be around 2,500, plus some light cardiorespiratory work, going to give us a 1.5 pound per week loss, which is a great rate, not too fast, not too slow. So for protein intake, a higher protein intake is going to be beneficial due to several mechanisms while you're in a caloric deficit. So protein has a much higher thermic effect than other macronutrients. It's more satiating, and it increases the likelihood of lean body mass retention. Nothing that we haven't already learned from our macronutrients video about protein. So a more aggressive fat loss phase will benefit from the highest end of protein intake due to the increased risk of loss of lean tissue. Due to the many benefits of a higher protein intake, while in a deficit, we will set Joe's protein intake at 1 gram per pound of body weight, or 200 grams per day, which is equivalent to roughly 32% of his total daily caloric intake. So carbohydrate and fat intake for Joe. Carbohydrates are essential for preventing lean body mass loss by fueling your weight training, and fats are essential for maintaining normal body function and hormone levels. So while in a caloric deficit, especially for men, setting fat slightly lower allows for a higher carbohydrate intake, and if your carbs are set too low during an energy restricted period, you can sabotage your weight training and therefore increase your risk for losing lean body mass, which is definitely what we are not shooting for. We're shooting for adipose tissue loss. Therefore, we will set Joe's fat intake at 20% of his total daily calories, which is on the very lowest end of acceptable fat intake, or 55 grams. From there, we will fill the remaining calories with carbohydrates. This sets Joe's carbohydrate intake at around 300 grams. Final macronutrients for Joe are going to be 2,500 calories, 200 grams of protein, 55 grams of fat, and 300 grams of carbohydrates. We're also going to add in a little bit of cardiorespiratory work, really not relying on cardio to create our caloric deficit. We're going to primarily have caloric intake reduction be what creates our deficit, but we're just going to add in a little bit of cardio for Joe, just so he can eat a little bit more. I'm always one to try and eat as much as we can in a caloric deficit. So we're going to work primarily look at 3 different modes of cardio and compare the benefits of each. So high intensity or vigorous cardio would be like your high intensity interval training, sprints and whatnot. Moderate intensity would be like jogging or running. Low intensity would be either walking or walking on an incline treadmill, just a very light intensity. So low intensity steady state is going to be my preference for putting cardiorespiratory work in a fat loss phase, just because of the very light fatigue debt increase that it incurs. Higher intensity modes of cardio are going to be much more fatiguing, therefore they'll burn you out quite a bit faster. However, low intensity steady state is time consuming and doesn't burn very many calories, whereas higher intensities are quicker and burn more calories, but they are more fatiguing. So since Joe's deficit is fairly significant, we will stick to 3 30-minute low-intensity steady-state cardio sessions per week, each burning around 120 calories or 360 calories total. This will account for the additional 350-ish calories per week Joe needs to push him into a 1.5 pound per week loss. Moving on to our second case study, we are going to look at Janet, Joe's sister. Janet is a dance teacher. She's a choreographer. Her primary goal is to gain muscle mass. She's 25 years old and 120 pounds. So we're going to use that same baseline multiplier, 120 times 10, which equals 1200. Multiply it by her active lifestyle of 1.8, gives us 2160. We're going to round up. Janet's estimated maintenance calories are going to be 2200 calories per day, or 15,400 calories per week. So looking at rate of weight gain, rate of weight gain is going to be dependent on your experience in the gym, your fitness level, if you will. So beginners are defined as someone who's able to progress most training loads in the gym on a week-to-week basis. For example, week 1, 100 pounds for 5 sets of 10 on the chest press, week 2, 105 pounds, week 3, 110, or some sort of progression, whether it be intensity or frequency or, reps per set or number of sets, whatever it is, you're able to progress each week. And those people are going to gain roughly 1 to 1.5% of their body weight per week. And you can see there's just an incremental decrease. The more experience you get, the slower your rate of body weight gain should be. This is just to accommodate rate of fat gain, which is inevitably going to come with your rate of muscle gain. So weight gain not just being muscle, but it's also fat. The more experienced you are, the less muscle you can put on, or the slower rate of muscle gain you can incur. So since Janet's a beginner, we will put her on the lower end of expected weight gain for novice lifters. 120 pounds times 1% equals 1.2 pounds per month. We will set Janet's goal as gaining 1.2 pounds per month, since it's within that acceptable 1 to 1.5% percentage of body weight gain per month. Janet's estimated maintenance calories are around 2,200, and her target rate of gain is around 1% or 1.2 pounds per month. So we're going to multiply that target rate of gain in pounds. So 1.2 pounds times 3,500, which is going to account for us a pound, even though it's across the board for adipose tissue, and we're going to use it for lean tissue as well, which is going to equal around 4,200. We're going to divide that by 30, and we're going to get 140 calorie surplus per day, bringing her up to 2,340 calories per day. Since Janet is in a caloric surplus, her body has more nutrients than it needs, effectively eliminating any risk for losing lean body mass. She's also going to be training pretty hard, which is going to really negate that risk. Therefore, we're going to set her protein intake on the low side, around 0.8 grams per pound of body weight per day. Setting protein intake somewhat low also leaves more room for carbohydrates, which is going to be the main fuel for Janet's training. So we're going to set her protein intake around 96 grams. We're going to set Janet's fat intake on the higher end and round it up slightly to help her hit the caloric intake and macros for the day, since fat is more calorically dense, and a higher fat intake is useful if an individual has a hard time eating enough food to push them into a surplus. So we're going to set her fat intake at 27%, which gives us 70 grams of fat per day. From here, we're going to fill the rest of her calories with carbs. So we're going to take the calories that we've established so far, which are going to be fat and protein, which gives us 1,014 calories. We're going to subtract that from her total daily energy expenditure, which is going to be 2340, which gives us 1326 calories. Divide that by 4 calories per gram of carbohydrates, which equals 331 grams of carbohydrates. Now, these macronutrient ratios are not set in stone. If Janet wants to increase her fat intake but take away from her carbs, she could absolutely do that to try and make it sustainable. So the final macros for Janet are going to be 96 grams of protein, 70 grams of fat, 331 grams of carbs, and 2340 total calories. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Please don't hesitate, if you have any comments or questions, to drop me a comment in the comment section below, or just feel free to shoot me an email, however you want to get a hold of me. I'm going to have exercise demonstration videos coming up next, so stay tuned for those, and thank you so much.